Hello, my name is Tony. British folk horror, a film type considered to be a subgenre of the broader horror movie gestalt. Such films usually have a rural or rustic look and feel, are set in bucolic environments which are picturesque and attractive. The visual impression is a surface veneer, superficially non-threatening, but beneath that surface and in the terrain itself lurk and simmer undercurrents of concealed malevolence. The landscapes are key. They are places with wide open spaces, but in their own way isolate, cut off, trap individuals and groups. Their fields, woods, villages and waterways play host to hidden ghosts and demons, and perhaps the worst monsters of all, people. They draw on ancient practices and rituals of paganism, black magic, satanic worship, religious fear and paranoia, and clinging superstition, pitting them confrontationally against benign orthodox religion and sometimes modern technology, reason and science. Kickstarters of the genre proper included Michael Reeves' Witchfinder General, Piers Haggard's The Blood on Satan's Claw, and Robin Hardy's Peerless the Wicker Man. By a strange coincidence, all those films mentioned were of a rare and impressive quality. Superb examples of horror fantasy cinema, some of the very best. It's not a prolific genre then, but one that seemed to have a remarkable knack of producing consistently great work. Then you get to 1986 and something like Rawhead Rex comes along. This one takes a somewhat different approach to the folk horror genus and challenges its time-honoured tradition of creative quality, simply by being shit. Now, on the basis of that statement alone, the casual viewer might imagine the film is not very good, and it'd be right, it bloody well isn't. However, in the pursuit of fairness and a balanced methodology, for I do like to at least try to be fair and balanced, sometimes not very hard, but it is what it is, Rawhead Rex does fall into the category of the so awesomely crap it's endlessly entertaining. And I, for one, against every atom of my better judgment, which even at its best isn't all that good, love it to bloody bits. Something that, fortunately or not, doesn't preclude me from being critical on its ass. Quite the opposite. Rawhead Rex was a short story by Clive Barker. It appeared in volume 3 of his Books of Blood anthology series. Now, I don't know for sure and I'm unclear on the details, but somehow someone got the rights to make a film of it, and Barker was contractually locked in to write a screenplay. So he did. Then he was locked out of having any further creative input with the making and direction of the film itself, or having any say over how his script was utilised or reshaped. Under the circumstances, it probably comes as no great surprise to learn that he hated the film. Considering the original story was Barker's and the screenplay attributed to him, it didn't do much for his reputation. But then at some point he must have sold something, and if it's your artistic soul, when you sign on the line, expect someone to turn up with kerosene matches, marshmallows and the spark of a crazed fucking arsonist in their eyes. Although the action is transplanted from rural Kent to rural Ireland, the setup of the film is essentially the same as Barker's original, which is, in a country backwater, the murderous pagan deity Rawhead is resurrected, and embarks on a rampage of wanton carnage and destruction. His aim is to, well, I don't know really, and neither does anyone else, because it's never truly raised or specified. So I suppose it's just to kill people and wreck shit. Mindless and random, yes, but maybe he's an anarchist. Who can say? A pagan anarchist. A panarchist. This isn't going to go well, is it? Rawhead's rejuvenation just happens to coincide with the arrival of an American nuclear family on the scene. They weren't in the short story. Why do they have to be American? Brit folk horror doesn't traditionally favour transatlantic importation. No, it's all English and Celtic mythology, druidic Stonehenge stuff, not Johnny-come-lately Salem witch trials hysterics. I don't even know why I posed the question when I know the answer. It's so American audiences have some Americans to look at. I'm not being racist or derogatory, I'm a big fan of Americans and America, but come on, there's a time and a place. And it's not like it's really going to help the film any, but we're stuck with them for the duration. Howard Hallenbeck, David Dukes, is likely an anthropologist at a guess, who's travelling around Ireland and researching old churches and pre-Christian iconography. He's with his wife Elaine, Kelly Piper, and kids, son Robbie, Hugh O'Connor, and daughter Minty, Coraline. Minty, What sort of fucking name is that? Short for mint julep, perhaps? Mint choc chip? Minty Zuma? Anyway, Minty is cute and likeable, whereas Robbie is an obnoxious little shit with the most incredible jug years this side of King Charles or Easter Island. One good gust of wind and you'd find him in the next fucking valley. A local farmer decides that big monolithic standing stone in his field that's been there since time began is an obstacle and eyesore and needs to go, urgently like. Trying to remove it awakens and releases the mighty Rawhead.
That's what they called him. Rawhead!
Perhaps more descriptively, Rubberhead. For the head of Rawhead is a cheap, barely animated, unconvincing, poorly sculpted lump of fanged latex with red bulbs for eyes, transplanted onto the torso of an iron-pumping Austrian roid guzzler dressed in ragged road warrior leather gear. It's so shit the jaw hardly moves, not the best look for something that roars often and bites a lot. If you can suppress laughter or disbelief, you're a better man than me, matey girl. Howard hits the local church with his camera and meets the eye-rolling nut-bar verger O'Brien, Ronan Wilmot. In the church itself, he finds a stained glass window depicting a confrontation between an anonymous figure without a face and a monstrous red-eyed demon thing. When Howard leaves to meet with the Reverend Coot, Niall Toybin, O'Brien lays his hand on the church altar and has a strange psychedelic experience. From this moment onwards, having seen the light, he becomes Rawhead's acolyte. Rawhead, meanwhile, savages a young farmer to death but stops at doing the same to his pregnant wife. Seems he has a certain inexplicable reverence for pregnant women. Whilst he hangs up the farmer's corpse in a wooded area and starts to chow down on it, he's seen by a young boy from a nearby caravan site. The boy's brother, Andy Finbar Lynch, is in the same woods trying to shag his girlfriend. Andy lucks out on both sexual gratification and life. Rawhead rips him up as he tries to flee. His girlfriend makes it back to the caravan site still holding his severed hand. What a laugh! Howard takes a midnight stroll and spots Rawhead standing in the distance with a severed head dangling from his fist. Odd, he thinks. He reports his sighting to the police, who, with several murders on their hands to deal with, dismiss his report of an 8-foot-tall inhuman culprit with glowing red eyes. As you'd expect. Typical bloody police, only interested in grounded explanation for stuff. Will they never learn? Leaving the village to head for Dublin, Howard and family stop so daughter Minty can take a piss. Left alone in the car, jug-eared Robbie is attacked and massacred by Rawhead. In front of Howard as it happens, who watches helplessly, or at least doesn't make any effort to help. Maybe the loss of a kid with those hideous lug holes was something he thought he could live with at a push, but no, turns out he couldn't, and returns to the village full of grief and remorse and blames Inspector Gissing, Niall O'Brien, for ignoring his crazy eyewitness account earlier. Rawhead ambushes Inspector Gissing on the road and hypnotizes him into being his minion. The pagan Punisher then returns to the caravan park and starts trashing the place, busting up shit and shredding people. A stray rifle bullet fired by one of the residents hits a gas tank and adds to the destruction. Next stop, the church, where O'Brien has turned things upside down looking for something on behalf of Rawhead. Reverend Coot witnesses O'Brien being baptized by Rawhead in the churchyard. The baptism consists of O'Brien kneeling in front of the demigod and laughing insanely, whilst Rawhead pisses all over him. Yes, you heard that right. We'll come back to it later. Coot has time to call the police just before he's attacked by O'Brien and Rawhead. The police rock up with firearms, but delaying shooting the monster as he's carrying the torn-up body of Reverend Coot in his arms. This provides Gissing with the opportunity, under Rawhead's control, to splash gasoline everywhere, light it up, and set on fire the Fuzz, their cars, and ironically himself, resulting in further pyrotechnic mayhem and death. By now, Howard has decided to take matters into his own hands. He arrives at the devastation at the church where Reverend Coot tells him with his dying breath that there is something in the altar of which Rawhead is afraid. Inside, O'Brien is still conducting his search, trashing and burning stuff. Howard subdues him, busts open the altar, and finds within something closely resembling a lump of fossilized dinosaur shit. On closer examination, it is a stone carving shaped like the torso of a pregnant woman. O'Brien escapes to the churchyard to inform Rawhead he's sort of fucked up. The old god generously rewards his loyalty by ripping his throat out. There's gratitude for you. Howard confronts Rawhead with the artifact. He holds it up in front of the monster and immediately it succeeds in doing nothing, and continues to do nothing. So Rawhead whacks Howard about a bit until his wife Elaine shows up and raises the artifact. Now we're cooking on unholy gasoline. The artifact needs the hands of a good woman on it to power it up. Not unlike my d***. A ghostly female spectre materializes behind Elaine and the artifact fires lasers at Rawhead. Sisters are doing it, baby. Howard whacks the beastly bugger with a handy shovel and he falls through the earth where an avalanche of stones drops upon him and squish his pagan ass. He's a goner. Except an epilogue sees Andy's brother laying flowers on his grave. When he makes to leave, Rawhead springs up from behind some daffodils and roars. Fooled ya! I can't tell you it's not a crap film, I just can't. There is absolutely no point in misleading anyone, so I won't. It's lazily and flatly directed by someone called George Pavlou, who doesn't seem to have much flair for the medium. The few jump scares here and there are heavily signposted, mismanaged and mistimed, eliciting a weary sigh in place of a gasp. I don't think Mr. Pavlou had a subsequently glittering directorial career, or if he did, the public toilets in which it glittered were not frequented by me. Considering what a literate writer Barker is in the prose medium, I find it hard to believe that much of his original script accounts for the bulk of the narrative content and dialogue. I could be wrong, but I think this is what could kindly be termed an adaptation or rewrite of his original screenplay by a person or persons unknown. Some of the lines the actors are given are sheer doggerel. Speaking of whom, they do throw themselves into it with gusto, there's no doubt in their enthusiasm, but the fine art of screen acting seems to have passed most of them by. Ever seen an old Todd Slaughter film from the 1930s? The acting in these antiques was cranked up, exaggerated, archly theatrical, over-melodramatic, prime-reared, country-fried ham. Watch Rawhead Rex and revel in the resurrection of not only the titular antagonist, but that particular style of performance. The foremost perpetrator being Ronan Wilmot as the crazed verger. He's something else, man. Finally, no matter how the editing tries to disguise it, no matter how much jump cutting there is, how much flashing away from bared teeth to gaping wounds and gushing claret, Rawhead Rex, the pagan deity, looks totally fucking absurd and about as threatening as Daisy Duck. Something looking like that comes after you, you'll die laughing long before he gets within striking range. I will concede though, his first appearance, bursting out of the ground at the sight of the standing stone, is the one time he looks halfway decent. It's brief, fast, sharp and short and doesn't allow for time to focus too closely. That comes later. It's a bad film no matter what anyone tries to tell you to the contrary. Yet, God help me, I enjoy it so much. On first contact it made me laugh out loud. Subsequent viewings always raise a smile with the occasional chuckle thrown in. I find it better to watch it no more than every 5 or 6 years. It isn't that compelling, but it is at least something I can find entertainment in. And there are certain elements that never struck me before or I failed to notice or consider until about the 3rd or 4th rodeo. The scenery, the location environments often look great. Cinematographer John Metcalf puts them to good use here and there. Colin Town's score is hardly a standout, but it's okay. There are occasional flashes of inspiration. Early on during a church service there's a slow pan away from the stained glass window with the light shining through it, which turns into 2 red beams from the Rawhead figure's eyes that track across the church congregation to land on O'Brien. It's a smart and striking effect. Then there's the monstrous figure in a field glimpsed by Elaine as they drive past. It's a creepy little jolt that turns out to be just a scarecrow, on that occasion anyway. You get a kid being killed in front of a parent, although it's not explicitly shown, which is a rare occurrence and comes as quite a shocking surprise on first viewing. O'Brien's baptism by urine is a solid gold comedy classic. In no other movie will you see a monster whip out his old boy and piss all over a guy kneeling before him, while said recipient cackles like mad in pure ecstasy. It looks like some weird fancy dress, gay cottaging hookup and golden shower pagan baptism combo from the pages of a depraved comic book. The reaction of Reverend Coot only serves to enhance the merriment. Yeah, it's a side-splitter of rapturous absurdity and derangement. And I ask you, in what other non-intentional comedy film on this planet would you find a verger saying to a vicar,
Get upstairs, fuckface.
"Get upstairs, fuckface"? Now, I might be slow on the uptake, but I think it wasn't until the third time I saw it this scene made some irrational sense. I initially dismissed it as bizarre and meaningless, another example of poor direction and flawed narrative content. Then it hit me what it must be referencing. Why it's referencing it, I still don't know. And I've been unable to find anyone who thinks the same way as me on the subject, so maybe I'm dead wrong. But here goes. Howard and Elaine are walking through the empty village. They stop on the pavement and begin to French kiss. Quite raunchy and full-on French kissing. Really getting into it. A short elderly lady in a red coat with a hood and a very sour and unamused face finds them blocking her path. She clears her throat to draw their attention. They unlock lips and let her pass. Looking at her receding figure, Elaine comments that the woman reminds her of someone or something she's seen before, but can't place. Now, crazy as this may sound, I think it's referencing Nicholas Roeg's Don't Look Now, and the pivotal figure in a red hooded coat that haunts the back alleys and waterways of Venice in that film. The reason it sounds crazy is that I can think of no practical explanation why it would reference Don't Look Now. Anyone with any ideas, don't be shy about shouting them out. I want to hear them. I like the theme of the old gods returning to reclaim what was once their domain before it was displaced and usurped by Christianity. The kingdom of Christ ultimately prevailed through battle and bloodshed and held the ancient beliefs of the pagan religions in dire contempt. It literally said,
"All this worship of the elements, gods and goddesses of fertility, fire, earth, air, water and such is a load of bullshit. Over here we've got a married virgin impregnated by a ghost in a dress, thus giving birth to the son of the one true God. That's way better and makes much more sense."
I like a little pushback. Although it may well be more by accident than design, there's a strong feminist message in there. The figure in the stained glass window who first conquered and imprisoned Rawhead is faceless, but it turns out was obviously a woman. This comments directly on the traditional male-dominated church and its suppression of women in religion. History repeats in the end. It is a female who is empowered by mystical forces to defeat the rampage in Rawhead. The men get nowhere, certainly not the entirely male forces of law and order, who in this movie make Max Sennett's Keystone Cops look like Brian De Palma's The Untouchables. Now, although I think the feminist angle is a valid observation, possibly because I made it, the film sort of blows its feminist credentials during Rawhead's attack on the caravan park. It does so with a completely gratuitous and unnecessary scene, one that feels as if they thought, know what we haven't got in this? Naked female breasts. We should get some. Rawhead drags a woman outside through a caravan window. Her male companion tries to grab her and pull her back in, and her dress is ripped off. Now, I'm usually the last to complain about female nudity in films, but in this instance, really, did you have to? None of the male victims had their kits stripped off to reveal their bits. Hey, maybe I'm a feminist at heart. Now, there's a thought. As a film, as a folk horror contender, it's a big fat lemon, and I'm not going to try and sell you a lemon. I like it not because it's any good, but because it's bad in ways that I personally find unintentionally hilarious and amusing. It zips along with economy and pace and certainly won't tax anyone's little grey cells. My experiences with it may not mirror those of the majority, so I would suggest caution if you were toying with the idea of giving it a spin. Of certain films, I can confidently say I think this is worth watching. Rawhead Rex ain't one of those and never will be. But if a rubber-headed monster pissing over an insanely rapturous church verger in a graveyard is an image you don't mind being branded into your psyche forever, then it may be your thing. Grateful thanks for your time and attention. Please feel free to do whatever you choose to do next. Hit like, don't like, comment, subscribe, check out my early access Patreon thing, or even make a welcome financial contribution via the thanks button. I shall return with something else in the very near future, health and welfare permitting. Bye for now, pilgrims.